Hi, I'm Maria Bernier, the State Data Coordinator for the Connecticut State Library. Just wanted to give you a brief video introduction to the new spreadsheet tool for counting programs and activities. Um, the start is on our statistical profile page. So if you come here to the website libguides.ctstatelibrary.org/DLD/stats, that kind of gets you to this general page, our home page, and then you'll want to click on the second tab right here for annual report. So look for the annual report tab. And once that page opens, you're going to come down here and select the third tab for programs. So this is all on the programs tab, giving you a little information about what's a program and how to count it for the purposes of the annual report. So let's scroll down here just a little bit. Right here, you'll see the spreadsheet program and activity counts. We're going to come back to that. I want to cover the other explanatory information below first, but you'll see right up at the very top is where you'll find the spreadsheet that you can download and start tracking for your library or your department. It's right there. But as we go down, there's a little information here about how to count something, whether it's a program or an activity, and then how to count either attendance at that program, views of a pre-recorded program, or participants in your activities. And there's a little more explanatory information here. You're going to pick one format, and whether it's an in-person program on-site at your library or off-site somewhere else, community center when we're allowed to do that, the beach, a church, someplace off-site that's not your library, that's also a program. There can also be live virtual programs, and these are synchronous, so they're happening in the moment. There can also be pre-recorded or asynchronous programs. So this will be technically a program going forward in the annual report and the IMLS Public Library Survey next year. So that's a program as well. And then you have the format option for a self-directed activity as distinct from a program. Then you'll want to make sure you choose an age for your primary intended audience. So yeah, there's grown-ups who come to your story times, but the primary intended audience is children. So you're going to say the age for that program is kids, and you're going to count all the attendance or all the participants for that particular program. Then you will count either attendance or views or number of participants. And how that breaks down is if you're doing a live in-person program or a live virtual program, you'll count the attendance. If you're doing a pre-recorded program, maybe something that you post up online for a week or a month or semi-permanently, you're going to count the number of views. And that means the number of people who actually pushed the play button and watched your recording. So you'll count the number of people who viewed it, who watched it as of June 30th, which is the end of the annual report period, or as of the date you take the recording down. So maybe you put your story time up for a week and then you bring it down. You just count the number of people who watched it while it was up. And then for your activity, you'll count the number of participants. So the number of people who actually participated in that activity, however you want to determine that. So here are some examples of what's a program and what's a self-directed activity. And if we go back up here, so remember, if you picked one of these options that ends with program, here are some examples of what a program might be, just based on what libraries are typically doing these days. And the program list could be exhaustive, so I put etc. there. There's no way I could come up with a list of every single program you guys are doing because it's super extensive. So here are just some examples to guide you as what we mean by programs. And then here are some examples of what we mean by self-directed activities. And these are many things that you're doing during the pandemic. So it could be a take and make kit, could be some other kind of grab and go activity. That's an activity. Likewise, a self-guided story walk where you're putting the story out in town or around your library and your patrons and families are walking themselves through it. That's an activity that's self-directed. maybe a contest or a scavenger hunt, whether that's in your library or outdoors, or something that the patrons are reporting back to you, that's also a self-directed activity. And you'll see some other examples there. And again, that list could be huge. So there's no way I could come up with all the activities. And again, that's where we put the etc. there. There could be many different other specific activities that fall into that category. And as we scroll down, here's some FAQs. I'm going to let you guys read that on your own when you come back to this page. And then at the very bottom here are the definitions. So what does IMLS mean by program? And what does the State Library mean by a self-directed activity? So to backtrack, this program definition comes to us from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and they are the organization that sponsors the annual Public Library Survey. So this is the survey of public libraries across the country, around the nation, and in the territories. And we all, every single state, every single public library are reporting information based on the same questions and the same definitions. So this definition of program comes to us from IMLS, from their public library survey, and it has remained consistent for several years now. So the definition of a program, according to IMLS, is any planned event which introduces the group attending to any of the broad range of library services or activities, or which directly provides information to participants. And it goes on and for a little bit more, and I'll let you read that. But really, it's about a planned event, and there's a group attending. Now, we have also just recently in Connecticut created a new question where we can capture numbers about self-directed activities. So this particular question will not be feeding up to IMLS. It's something we can use in our state. But we're trying to get at activities as distinct from programs. And a definition of self-directed activity is that it's provided by the library staff for patrons, typically on an occasional basis, but without the expectation of staff interaction while the activity is being completed. So there's the distinction there, right? That activities are done without the expectation of library staff interaction. This may be something that patrons are taking home to do, or it may be something that they're doing in the library, but without the expectation of library staff interaction. In contrast to a program where there's absolutely library staff interaction in terms of that planned event and the group interaction. So this will hopefully help you distinguish what's a program and what's an activity for the purposes of the annual report. And it's good to recognize that what your library calls a program is not always what IMLS calls a program. So for the purposes of your annual report, keep referring back to these definitions of a program and an activity. Okay, so we're going to scroll back up finally to the spreadsheet, program and activity counts. Let's open that up. And it will open as an Excel spreadsheet. Once the security scan is done. Here we go. Make sure you enable editing. Okay, and you'll see right down here that there are two sheets within this Excel workbook. It automatically opens to the first one where you can track information in the spreadsheet itself. So you'll use this tab if you're trying to keep track of the data within Excel. In contrast, if your library prefers to work with paper, there is a version where you can print this out, maybe keep it on a clipboard, keep it at a service desk, and tally everything by hand. But we're going to start with this first one where we're tracking it in the spreadsheet itself. And just to review our columns here, let's scooch over here, column A, you're going to type in your program name, whatever that is, totally up to you. Program date, these are provided for your convenience because maybe you want to eventually sort this by month or by some other way, but this gives you the program date. And then here in column C, you're going to pick one format from the drop-down box here. So that goes back to what we saw in the LibGuide. You've got a choice, one choice, an in-person on-site program, in-person off-site, or a live virtual program, or that pre-recorded on-demand program. So you've got 4 different kinds of programs, and then you also have the choice of self-directed activity. So you'll pick one of those. Then in column D, you're going to pick your target age for that particular program. And it's a drop-down box here, back to that controlled vocabulary that we know so well as librarians. You'll pick whichever age group is your target age for that program. Could be kids. I added these 2 new ages, and children's librarians, you'll pick up on this. We used to ask about ages 0 to 11. But it sounds like the public library survey is heading toward a further breakdown of those ages. And it's easier to capture this data now than to start capturing it in like April when we finally have a decision from IMLS on this. So I went ahead and broke down the ages. So it's either 0 to 5 or 6 to 11 now. So those are the new children's ages. The YA ages are still 12 to 18. Then we've got the adults, 19 plus, and general interest covers intergenerational family, where you've got all ages in the room. That may be your target age for that particular program. Now in column E is where you're going to put the attendance number for live programs. So if over here you picked one of these live programs, in person, or live virtual, you're going to fill in the attendance number here in column E. If over here you picked a pre-recorded on-demand program, you're going to put the number of views here in column F. So that's views specifically for pre-recorded programs. And then over here, if you picked a self-directed activity, you'll put the number of participants here in column G for those self-directed activities. And there's that little clue here in parentheses right underneath each word to help you remember which that format that refers back to. So that will help keep you back on track with those. All right, so just as an example, I'm going to type some examples in here, and they're going to be kind of all ages. Your library can use this particular tool however you want. This tool is for your convenience. You're not going to send this spreadsheet to me. It's for you to keep track if you want to. And you may choose at your library to have one spreadsheet with everybody's programs in it, right? So you could, depending on how you want to handle it, have children's, YA, adult, all ages in this same spreadsheet somewhere on your server or somewhere on a shared computer. Totally up to you. Another option is that you could have a version of this spreadsheet in the children's room, and another one at the teen area, and another one for adult services. And then at the end of the month or the end of the year, all of you will feed your numbers up to your director and board. And then at the end of the year, you're going to put them into the annual report for me. So how you use this tool is totally up to you. I'm just trying to provide some way of making this counting a little easier and less onerous for libraries. So let's do some examples in here. Say we had an animal show, and it was way back in October. And this one was live virtual program. So maybe we had an organization come in and do amazing stuff for us on Zoom, where we got to see birds and reptiles, and everybody was watching it kind of in the moment. You could only come then. We didn't record it. So it was a live virtual program. And it really was a general interest one. You know, we had kind of thought maybe we would pitch it at kids or teens, but really we, in the end, determined that this was going to interest everybody in town. It was a Zoom program, so we decided that our target age was a general interest here. And then because this is a live virtual program, I'm going to count the number of attendance at the program. And depending on how your library tracks, you might have attendance based on the number of registrations, or you might have asked people in the moment in the program to tell you how many participants were watching on their end. So maybe you typed in the chat and you said, hey guys, let us know how many people are watching this on your end of the screen so that we can really keep a good head count and a good attendance for this live program. And when you did that, you learned that you had 74 people of all ages in your program. Bravo, that sounds like a really successful program. So you'll put 74 there. And we did not have a recording, so this is going to remain 0. And it was not a self-directed activity, so that field is going to remain blank. All right, so our next program is maybe a Halloween take and make. And we had these kits out and ready on the 28th. This will be a self-directed activity. So remember, going back to the definition, this is something that the library staff prepared with the expectation that there would be no interaction with the library staff, that the patrons would take it home and work on it at their own time, their own pace, without interaction from staff. So that's a self-directed activity. And we kind of thought that was going to be ages 6 to 11. That's kind of how we pitched the program for kids, a Halloween take and make. So we're going to skip over here to number of participants because it's a self-directed activity. We made 50 of those kits and they were all taken. They got snapped up. So we're going to say there were 50 participants in that self-directed activity. Then we're going to try a toddler story time. And that was maybe on the 29th. And our toddler story times are actually pre-recorded. So the children's librarian records them kind of ahead of time. She's got the story going. There's not necessarily the back and forth with participants here. She records it ahead of time. And this target audience age is 0 to 5. And because it's a pre-recorded program, we're going to count the number of views. Now, I'm not sure that I am quite ready to count the number of views because this Storytime video is still up and people are still watching it. And we leave our Storytime videos up for 1 month. So on November 29, when I go to take that video down, I'm going to count the number of people who watched it, the number of views, depending on my social media platform. And I'm going to enter that number there. So we're just going to speculate at this point and say that it got 54 views. So 54 participants or people or parents and kids actually clicked watch. So it was 54 views there. Now, if you leave those videos up kind of semi-permanently for a long time, you're going to wait and fill in that number on June 30th, the end of the annual reporting period. So that's when you'll fill that in. But it helps if you've got it in your spreadsheet right now. You know that's a placeholder. If you want, you know what we could do is just say, I don't have that number. I'm going to highlight that so that I remember next month or at the end of the year that I need to go back and count that number right there. All right, we're going to try another one. We have a D&D club that meets weekly. And they are meeting virtually now. So that's a live virtual program. Someday they're going to be back in person on site. So that format will change when that club changes, when we're actually able to have people all together in a space. We're hoping for that someday. And this group tends to be teenagers. It's really pitched at the teenagers. It's run by our YA librarian, and she's aiming to get the kids involved there. So this is a live program, and she was super psyched that she had 8 people in attendance that week. That was a good one. And then maybe our library has something like a scavenger hunt or a contest. Each month we hide a little teddy bear around the building and we ask kids to try and find it, and they report back to us when they found it. And when they report back to us, we give them a sticker so we know how many kids actually found the bear and how many kids were participating. So that's a self-directed activity. If you go back to the definition of activity, it's something that the library staff provide and that the patrons can participate on whenever they want to without the expectation of the library staff interaction. So that's a self-directed activity. And we kind of, it could be 0 to 5, it could be 6 to 11. We're going to go with ages 6 to 11 here. This is the number of participants. We gave away 26 stickers for that month. So that's how we know how many kids came through our teddy bear hunt. So you can see how this fills in. And now if you've been watching the totals here, these totals have changed. There's a formula built into each cell so that as you type in a new program and you pick from the drop-down menu and you fill in attendance, views, and participants, the totals will change. They're automatically set up to do that for you. So that when you get to the end of the month, you've got the numbers right here all ready to go. Or at the end of the year, however long you want to keep this spreadsheet. Just a little tip, this spreadsheet will go on for 5,500 programs. That's how the formulas are set up. So you literally could keep this same spreadsheet running for the entire year and be able to count everything in one place. But you'll see the totals here may look a little different from what you're accustomed to seeing in your annual report form in the past. That's because IMLS is likely adding more granular questions going forward in the public library survey. They have not decided on this formally. There won't be a decision until maybe March or April, but it looks like these are what the questions are going to be. And of course, it's always easier to start capturing this information earlier rather than later. So if things change and we end up needing to group this information together in the annual report, we can certainly do that. It's easier to add than it is to break apart. So these will most likely be the new questions going forward in the annual report. So you can see what those are. It gives you some ideas for how to count going forward. You can see here number of participants. See, like all of these numbers changed as I typed. Let's go in and say, you know what, we have reached the end of the month. I'm going to fill in 50 views here. And you can see the number of pre-recorded program views just changed. So this will automatically update as you type in your programs. It's a great way to keep track of everything. And as I said again, you can either keep one spreadsheet for the whole library, or you can keep multiple copies per department, however you want to handle it. This spreadsheet is really for your convenience. You're not required to use it. You're not going to send it to me. All you're going to send to me in the annual report is these totals for the year. But this at least gives you a way of counting them consistently throughout the months and throughout departments. So let's take a look at this second little sheet here, tally by hand on printout. So if your library likes to keep paper, which I totally appreciate, this is formatted so that when you print it, on the front, you're going to be able to keep track of the program name, the program date, as we did. You'll pick a format, a target age, attendance or views or participants. You'll be able to fill that in right all here on the front. And then on the back is where you'll total up all of these different questions, like we saw in the previous tab. So if you were to print this out and keep it on a clipboard, maybe somewhere at a desk, you can fill in the month maybe by hand as you go along. Maybe you want to keep them by month. Maybe you do a ton of programs at your library and this spreadsheet is really only going to count you for a couple of weeks. But it's set up so that you can change it, you can play with it. And then once you print it out, you'll handwrite in there the program name, you'll handwrite in a program date. You're going to pick a check mark or an X or something for one of these formats. There's this reminder up here, pick only one format. And then here you're going to do, again, a check mark or an X or some notation about your target age. There's that reminder to pick one target age. And then here you're going to fill in whichever number you have. So if it's live programs, you'll fill in the number of attendance. If it's a pre-recorded program, you'll fill in the number of views. And if it's a self-directed activity, you'll fill in the number of participants. So that goes here. Again, you're filling that in by hand on the printout. And when you get to the end of the month, you're going to have to go through and count by hand the number of in-person on-site programs, off-site programs, etc. And your activities will all go over here. So that's how you can do it if you wanted to do it on paper. You can see, though, that this electronic version in Excel maybe a little easier just because it does the math for you over here. This should be foolproof. These formulas are ready to go, and will be updating themselves as you go along and as you add more programs. So feel free to use this. Let me head back to our LibGuide over here. I did want to point out my contact information is over here on the right side of the page, so that if you have questions, you can click on that and email me. You can also give me a call. Please be in touch if you have questions, but many questions can be answered over here just by reading through the explanatory information. You may also want for some background information to take a look at changes to the 2020 report or this overall information about the 2020 annual report as well. So anyway, here's the new spreadsheet, program and activity counts. I hope you find it useful. I hope you find it something that helps you track what you're doing. And it's really just for your convenience, as I said. It's trying to get our Connecticut libraries to count more consistently what's a program, what's an activity, and how we're keeping track of the patrons who are engaging with that program or activity. So have fun with it. Send me some questions, of course, if you have questions, and enjoy all that. Bye-bye.